Hey guys, how's it going? So recently I got the chance to sign up and participate in what is called a Go Ruck Tough Challenge. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, it is an endurance event that you are doing with a team of people. And so it's not individually, you're with a team of people. And one of the great things about this event is it teaches you how to accomplish your objectives as a team. So if you work well together as a team, it can really help you guys out. But when you are not cohesive and when you don't really operate as a team, there's consequences that come out of that. Now our instructor for this event is a retired special forces operator. So I mean, when I say there were consequences, like there were consequences. And so very early on in this event, we couldn't really listen to each other. We couldn't do the things he was asking us to do. So he marched us down to the beach and he gave us all a sandbag and we had to fill it up. And what I didn't know is that for the next 8 hours, I was gonna be carrying a sandbag, and not a little one. It weighed 50 pounds, a 50-pound sandbag on top of the rucksack I was already carrying, which had 35 pounds. And so, yeah, it just wasn't a fun time. Now, early on, like, I was just toughing it out and trying to grind it out, and it was okay. But then after a few hours, it really started to take a toll on me. And, you know, I mean, everything was hurting, my back and my neck, and I was just getting a little angry. But then I started getting really angry because I noticed a guy on our team, he didn't have a sandbag. And the reason he didn't have a sandbag is because he was carrying the flag. And at every one of these events, you have a flag that you're carrying. And, you know, American flag, but the rule is the flag can never hit the ground. So someone is always carrying it. But this guy had the flag the whole time. And everyone else is carrying these heavy sandbags. We've got our rucksacks on. And the guy is just carrying the flag, you know, doing his thing, which, you know, somebody has to do it, obviously, but why is he not offering? Why is he not saying, hey, anybody else want to switch out? Anybody want to switch? Here, give me a sandbag, I got this. Nope, there was none of that going on. And so people, finally, they start asking, and eventually I ask, and the guy's like, no, I just can't, man. I just can't. I'm out of shape, and I'm like, really? Like we're all hurting, and we need to swap out. And so, yeah, in that moment, I was pretty angry. And I think I was mostly angry at this guy because I just felt like what I was having to carry was unnecessary weight. Like, I remember thinking I would not have to be carrying the sandbag if he would trade off with me, if he would switch out, or if he would be more of a team player. We probably wouldn't even have the sandbags in the first place. And so it's just unnecessary weight. And now it's hurting, you know, in a physical sense, a mental sense. And yeah, it was just a tough event. And just like I experienced in that moment, that event where I was carrying unnecessary weight, how many times do you and I do that in our everyday life, where we have these things that we are carrying, like insecurities, or our doubts, our fears, right? And these things can feel like unnecessary weight. But today I want to just home in on one, and I want to talk about this topic of anger. Because anger is what I would call unnecessary weight. And if you guys have been a part of this, you know we're in a series called Vices and Virtues. And Andrew kicked it off this past week. He talked about pride and humility. And so today we're going to talk about anger and forgiveness. And, you know, when I say anger, what I'm talking about is not the kind of anger you feel when maybe your sport team, when they lose, or when you're, you know, going down the hall and your toe hits the door or something, you're like, right? And it hurts, right? It hurts and you get angry in that moment. But what I'm talking about more is the anger that you feel when it's directed toward another individual. That's the kind of anger I'm talking about. So for some of you, it might be that anger is directed toward a parent, because maybe they broke their promise and they said that they were going to be together forever, and now they're not. Or maybe it's ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend. You know, they broke your heart and there's just this anger that's there. Or maybe it's a person at school who picks on you. They bully you and you just get angry because you just can't avoid them and they're always there and you just kind of hating the day because you know you're going to have to run into them. Or maybe it's a friend because, you know, you confided them, you told them something really deep and personal and they betrayed you, they shared it. Or maybe it was a moment where you really needed them and they weren't there for you. And the point is that we can feel so angry in those moments. And how many of us in those moments feel like we're completely justified? Like we say, I have every right to be angry at that person. I mean, ever seen that play out on social media? I mean, we see people blow up all the time, right? On their news feeds and these conversations. You know, it's interesting. There was a recent poll on, and they evaluated 80 million tweets on Twitter, and take a guess at what the number one emotion was. It was anger. And so listen, I know that we can come at this from a place where we feel completely justified. And maybe for some of you, you would even say that God says it's okay. Like even God is on my side and he says, I have every right to be angry. And listen, I don't know all of your stories. I know a lot of you, but I don't know your stories. And to that, I would say maybe. But for the most part, everyone who is listening to this right now, anger is nothing more than simply sin in our life. And it leaves us alone and bitter, and it's not the life that God has for you. So today I want to address this topic of anger through a passage of scripture, and we're going to go to the first book of the New Testament, the Gospel of Matthew, and we're going to be in chapter 18. And just to give you guys a little bit of context, Jesus has just had a conversation with his 12, the disciples, and he's been talking to them about how to deal with a brother who sins against you. And he's given them a lot of practical ways for how to do that. But as he does that, it kind of it evokes a response in Peter. And I want you to listen to what Peter says in response. And then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother when he sins against me? Up to 7 times. So, kind of some context real fast. By Jewish tradition, they were required to forgive someone up to 3 times. So Peter, he's kind of like, okay, well, if we have to do it up to 3, then I'll double that, and then I'll, throw one on for good measure. Okay, but notice what Jesus does and how he responds after that. And Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. So why does Jesus say that? Are we supposed to forgive someone 77 times? No. The point is, and what Jesus is trying to make, is that there's no limit to forgiveness. There's no limit to forgiveness. So it doesn't matter how many times you forgive someone. And the reason that's true is because of this question. And the question is this: when did Jesus stop forgiving you? So to help us understand this even more, because I know that truth can be hard to hear at times, but it's true. But to help us really understand this, because Jesus, he knows it's not an easy truth, right? But he gives us a parable to help fully grasp this even more. And a parable is just a story that's used to illustrate a truth. So if we keep going, he shares this parable with the 12. And this is in verse 23, and he says, Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And as he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. So to give you guys a little bit of context, 1 talent, all right, 1 talent is equal to almost 80 pounds of gold, all right, like 80 pounds. But 10,000 talents is equal to almost 180,000 years of wages. So if we were to translate that into like our present economy, that number would be close to 12 billion 500 million and change. So the point is that the dude owes an impossible debt that cannot be paid. It's an impossible debt. It's so much money, especially for people back in that time, right? And so take a look at how this guy responds, because this king, he's just furious at him and he's so angry. And the guy's like, listen, if you're not going to repay this debt, then you're going to give me everything you have. You're going to give me your wife. You're going to give me your children. You're going to give me everything you have. And listen to how this guy responds. The servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged. Be patient with me, and I will pay back everything. What? I mean, that's like a joke. He can't pay back $12.5 billion. It's crazy, right? It's crazy what's going on. But listen to what happens right after this in the next verse. In verse 27, the servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. I mean, do you guys hear what's happening in that story? It almost even doesn't compute because it's so crazy. Some guy owes another guy $12.5 billion, and he's about to say, you're going to give me everything you have. And then he says, you know what? It's okay. It's okay. The debt's been paid. It's canceled. Don't even worry about it. Right? I mean, is it like, as you read that, if you're like me, that strikes me. I'm just like, that's unbelievable. But the reality is, isn't that what the gospel is all about? Because every day you and I are marching against God. We're doing our own thing. We're trying to live in the way that we want to live, and we're going against everything that He wants for us. And we're racking up a debt, a impossible debt, this 12 billion and change, right? That can't be paid. But God, in His love and in His mercy, says, you know what? It's okay. The debt's been paid. And not only that, I want to invite you into this inheritance and you get to be a part of this inheritance, not based on anything that you have done, but what I have already done in and through the cross. So that's what leads me to my first point. And my first point is this, and I don't want you to miss this. God's anger against you was canceled. God's anger against you was canceled. What I want you to see, and what the Bible wants us to see here, is that you are the servant. You're the servant in this story, and you are the one who has that impossible debt that can't be paid. And if you don't understand that, you see, you've got to understand that your sin is a big deal. And it's created a divide, a gap between you and a perfect, holy, and a loving God. And if you're saying, well, that doesn't really matter, that's just not a big deal to me, then what you're really saying is that Jesus' payment, it was a waste. And if you don't believe that's true, then why did Jesus have to die for you? Why did Jesus have to die for you? Because you know, the Bible is pretty clear about our sin. It tells us, if we go to the book of Psalms, in Psalm 103, it says, our sins have been removed as far as the east is from the west. If we go to Micah chapter 7, it says that God delights in showing His mercy. See, not that long ago, I was in a car wreck. I don't know, about 2 months ago, and I was just at a stoplight, and this lady out of nowhere just plowed into my car, to the back of it. And I was kind of leaned forward in my seat. I didn't have my back against the seat. And she hit me so hard, it knocked me into the car in front of me. And so I got out, and like instantly my neck and my back kind of hurt. I'm like, that was not good. My car has a lot of damage in the back, a lot of damage in the front. The guy I hit, his car is damaged. Her car is extremely damaged in the front. I mean, hood's all in a triangle, and it's like crunched up. And I can just see, like, from her expression, like she just has this moment that you don't wish on anyone. And yeah, there's this moment where I could have been like really angry. I could have been like, hey, somebody's got to pay for this damage. Somebody's got to take care of what was done. But in that moment, I was actually filled with compassion, because I could just see that, like, no one wants to go through what she's having to right now. And as I'm thinking about everything she's going to have to owe, because I knew, man, like I was already hurting. So I'm like, I know I'm probably going to end up going to the, chiropractor, which I did. And the damage to the cars, I mean, there's just thousands and thousands of dollars. And what happens though, is that the insurance company comes in, they step in, and they said, you know what? We're going to cover everything. We're going to cover it all. And they covered all of my expenses for medical. They put all new parts on the vehicles. Parts are brand new. Even though this woman got a ticket, she got a citation for the accident, it didn't matter, because even though she was at fault, everything was still taken care of and the debt was paid. And so the point is that I want you guys to see through that story, because this leads us into our second point. The reason I feel like I was not able to blow up and show anger in that moment, because I had already experienced true forgiveness. And so the second point is this, that forgiven people are forgiving people. Forgiven people are forgiving people. You see, when you've experienced the forgiveness of God, it's something that you get to play out, that you get to show, that you get to model to other people. And so for you and I, we can so easily experience His grace and His mercy, but let's not kid ourselves. Like, we can also get up from this table, right? And we can forget about that in a moment. Because listen to what happens to the dude in the story right after he's just experienced God's grace, His mercy in this incredible moment. Take a look at what happens after this. In verse 28, it says, "And when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him and began to choke him. 'Pay me back what you owe me,' he demanded. And the fellow servant fell to his knees and he begged him. The same thing this guy begged earlier. He said, 'Be patient with me and I will pay you back.' But he refused. Instead, he went off, had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. And when the other servants saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in and he said, 'You wicked servant, I canceled all the debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you?' In anger, his master turned him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed." So it's a crazy story, but what's the point? What's the point in what is going on? And the thing is that nobody wins when it comes to anger. Nobody wins. It's unnecessary weight. It's an unproductive emotion, and it's something that you don't have to carry because it's what Jesus has already died and paid for. So the question I have for you guys is, who has wronged you? Who has hurt you? When you think about your anger that is directed toward that other person, if revenge were possible today, who comes to mind? Because listen, let's be clear on what forgiveness is, because forgiveness is not us being able to forget, okay? Because I'm not telling you guys that you have to forget. But what forgiveness is, it's you putting healthy boundaries in place. Because listen, just to let someone hurt you over and over again is not okay. It's not healthy. So I'm not asking you to forget, okay? But what I'm asking you is to model what Christ has already shown us. So what is it to forgive them? Well, this is the illustration I want to challenge you guys with. I want you to think of that person who has wronged you. And I want you to think about what it's cost you. Because for some of us, that hurt has cost us time away from work, time away from our school. It might just be time that you spent thinking about it for hours or days. For some of us, even years. And just to a degree, we all have a level of cost from people that have hurt us. So I want you to write their name down, and then I want you to write what they have cost you. And then I want you to take that piece of paper, I want you to ball it up, and I want you to throw it away as a way to illustrate that they don't have to pay you back. So the point is not letting anger win the day. It's not letting unforgiveness win the day. It's not letting your heart turn to bitterness. Because listen, we can take heart. Jesus has already told us what to say, and he's told us what to do. And it all comes down to one word: forgive. So as we wrap up, here's the thing. Here's the thing I want you to really hold on to is not letting anger win the day. It's not letting unforgiveness win the day. It's not letting our heart turn to bitterness. But instead, coming to the place to where you are taking a lot of stock and knowing that Jesus has already told us what to say, and he's already told us what to do. And it comes down to this one word: to forgive. So today, what I'm asking you guys to do is to do what I did, okay? Because when I was, participating in, the Go Ruck Challenge, man, I was just carrying around just this heavy weight, and it was, beating me down, and the whole time I was just thinking, man, this is unnecessary. But then, the event ended, and we were able to release the sandbags, and we were able to release all that weight that we had been carrying. And it was amazing, and I just felt this sense of peace and comfort, and all of a sudden, all that pain that I had was gone. And in the same way, that's what God is asking you guys to do today. He's asking you to release the anger that you feel toward that other person or the group of people, and to trust him that he can be the one who can release that, and that you can begin to walk in peace and comfort instead of anger and bitterness and unforgiveness, because that's not the life that God has for you.